Jonathan Trott has left England's Ashes Tour of Australia with a stress-related illness. It is a blow to the tourists, coming just a day after they were comprehensively beaten by 381s in the first test. And the England and Wales Cricket Board revealed that Trott will now take a break from cricket for the foreseeable future, with his return to the game to be decided in due course. Neil Shah from the Stress Management Society joins me now on the afternoon update. Hello to you, Neil.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. And how severe then must this problem be for Jonathan Trott to have left the squad mid-tour?
Now, what we have to bear in mind is it's not necessarily the amount of pressure he's under, but it's the ability to cope. This is not something that's new, something we see in many different industries. And in fact, we've seen it in cricket before, with Marcus Trescothick having a similar experience several years ago. And when we get to that point where we're unable to function anymore, and when it's having a detrimental impact, and not just to our health, but our well-being as well, that obviously it's very important that we take steps to remove that person from that environment.
And how common then is it that these professional athletes and sportswomen and men suffer from these stress-related problems? Is it quite a common occurrence?
Well, actually, in most sporting environments, there are good support mechanisms in place, and we have wonderful support in place, particularly like in the football industry, for example. There's a huge amount of pressure, but they have sports psychologists and people that work with nutrition, and there is the support network in place. Whereas in cricket, we've seen this come up on several occasions in the past, and it may be that there isn't enough support to help people to cope with the demands and pressure they're being subjected to.
Is it becoming increasingly important then that these stress levels are managed, because some of these sports people are under an intense spotlight all the time?
Absolutely. I think particularly if you're going to increase the amount of pressure people are being subjected to, consequently we need to increase the amount of support that's available as well. And if we don't, we're going to find more and more of these kind of instances coming up where people are just bowing and buckling under undue pressure and undue stress.
What kind of things can Jonathan Trott do now then to get back on the field, to get back on the pitch?
The first thing is to really help to understand what's led to this, what's the cause of this. We can all relate to the effects, the signs and symptoms of what we're experiencing, the output of the stress, so which could be, shutting down, not being able to cope, not being able to think clearly. But what's the cause of this? What's led to him feeling this way? So working with a professional to really help to understand what's led him to this particular position. And being able to work through that. And as I said, we often relate to kind of the output of the stress, but what's led us to get to that position in the first place. And talk therapies are particularly useful with that.
Coming from a medical point of view, will it have been a decision that will have been made by Trott himself, do you think, or perhaps by more senior members of the England staff?
I think it's probably been a combination of the both. I think in some instances you just get an individual that hold their hands up and declare that I can't cope anymore, I can't function anymore. But often we can then see this manifesting itself physically. So this will have a detrimental impact to performance. And this is where also you could be putting yourself in danger. We saw what happened to Fabrice Mwamba on the football pitch a couple of years ago with you're having a heart attack on the pitch. Now, sadly, this is increasing. We're getting more and more fit and healthy young athletes, young professional athletes that are having heart attacks and even dying on the football pitch. A few years ago we had Brian Shea, the Olympic marathon runner, that dropped dead during an Olympic marathon trial. We've had people like Mark Vivian Foe, who used to play for Man City, that again dropped dead on the football pitch. Now, ultimately, they may have had underlying health conditions, but the amount of stress and pressure they're being subjected to in some way will contribute to exacerbating any underlying health condition. So I think it's really important that we are picking these things up, and that we do have the medical professionals that are able to intervene and prevent someone from having a more serious, facing more serious repercussions as a result of a stress-related incident.
A lot of these people put their bodies through incredible processes, don't they, to be at the top of their game. Surely that has a significant effect on their mental state as well.
Absolutely. The two aren't isolated. We have to look at health holistically. The quickest way to impact your psychology is to look at your physiology, and equally the reverse is true. So, if you're under a huge amount of undue mental stress, that's going to manifest itself in terms of the way that your body is functioning. But equally, if your body is under tremendous strain, then that's also going to have an impact on your mind. So we cannot separate the mental and emotional and the physical states, because the two are completely interconnected, and any impact on one is definitely going to have an impact on the other.
Absolutely. What sort of mechanisms should these clubs and teams have in place? You alluded to it earlier, but what kind of things should they be doing to ensure this type of thing really doesn't happen as often as it is?
Firstly, making it okay and not looking at stress as a weakness, so making it okay to talk about it, making it okay to air your concerns and to be able to voice any challenges or fears or stresses that you're experiencing. Often, particularly in male-dominated sports, talking about stress can be seen as a sign of weakness. And can be seen as an admission that we're not strong enough to cope with the challenges. So people tend to bury them. Particularly men are better at burying their feelings and emotions. Now, it's no coincidence that a man is twice as likely to have a heart attack as a woman is, because we don't deal with our emotions unless, you're on the stands of a football stadium, then you can air your emotions freely. And I think it's making it okay to be able to talk about the challenges we're facing and ask for help without it being seen as an admission of weakness. That for me is the key first step. And looking at stress not so much as kind of a sort of a mental or emotional issue, but looking at it as from a physical perspective. Now, in sports, we do so much to drive the best sporting performance. We focus on sports science and nutrition and training programs, but actually, there's one area where you can drive tremendously more significant sporting performance, and that's looking at the impact that stress has. A stressed out professional will not be able to operate to the best of their game. But conversely, an absence of stress altogether will prevent the best sporting performance. So putting stress into context, that we need stress in a sporting environment to function at our best. But when it gets above that tipping point, we're not able to function. We start to shut down, and it's not the short-term intervention of stress like when you're on the pitch and you're about to play a game, but it's when you're staying in that state, even when you're off the pitch and you're in your hotel room and you're still under that same level of pressure. It's being able to use it to drive the best sports performance, but balancing out with being able to take yourself completely out of that state when you're not performing.
Absolutely. We've been hearing from former England captain Mike Atherton today on the show. He's been saying that England's busy schedule has certainly contributed towards this. It's, they really rarely get a break, these England players. I'm sure that's a contributing factor.
Absolutely. And, if we think of a 100-metre sprinter, they step onto the track, they run their 100-metre sprint, and then they relax. The race is over, and then they've got downtime, the rest and recovery period, which is as important to the sports performance as the actual training itself. Now, if you're constantly on, if you're constantly pushing yourself and not having the downtime and the recovery period, they will get to the point where you're going to reach burnout stage. And I think this is something that we're facing more and more and more, particularly, we kind of the modern cricket schedule. And if we look at things like the English Premier League, where there's just, we're pushing our players harder and harder and harder. And then not only are they facing physical injury, but we're also getting people that are burning out and just not coping and then going off the rails. And I think it's important that we do bear in mind that every person has a breaking point. Every person has the capacity to cope with so much, and you push them beyond that point, and there will be negative consequences that we will experience.
Neil, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
You're welcome.